Hey guys, this is Mike at Craft Beer Storm and brewer and founder of Great Brewing Company in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And today we have an extra special guest. We have Tod Mott, the great Tod Mott, New England legend, legendary brewer. He's been all over the place. He started at Catamount, then he went to Harpoon, the godfather of the Harpoon IPA, which is he's all over the place now. Then he went to Portsmouth Brewery in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. He came up with Kate the Great, which was one of the best beers on the planet. Fantastic Imperial Stout. And now he has his own brewery, Tributary Brewing Company in Kittery, Maine. But he's just the man. He's making good stuff. So talk to him at length about his career, and we have it for you right now. So here we go. Today we have Tod Mott from Tributary. How you doing, Tod?
I'm good. How are you, Michael?
I'm great. I'm glad you carved out the time to spend with me. Man, I got a lot of super heavy-duty brewers, including you. I got Mitch Steele on Thursday.
Oh, awesome.
We got the brewmaster for Guinness.
Wow.
How about
really?
that? Yeah. And
how do you wrangle him?
And we got Jason from Allagash.
Awesome.
This week is out of control,
Wow.
and starting out with you, I mean, it's fantastic. So, yeah, so I appreciate you having the time. So I want to get into it. Just maybe you can give everybody an idea of your history or how you got started, where are you now, and your journey throughout the beer industry.
Okay, well, it's pretty straightforward. I was actually getting my master's in ceramics, and my wife gave me a homebrew kit because we'd be firing kilns all night. And she was like, you can brew your own beer. And we, firing kilns all night, you drink a lot of beer. So I started making homebrew while I was in graduate school. And one thing led to another, and it was like, well, so what exactly is malt extract, and how do they make it? And then I took a homebrewing course on all-grain brewing, and one thing led to another. And the thing about ceramics, it's a process, it's understanding your ingredients, it's recipe formulation, it's time and temperature, it's chemistry. Mm-hmm. And transferring that into beer was pretty quick and easy for me. And, there's a little more science and a little less art, but it's a really cool transition. And so I was entering homebrew competitions and winning quite a bit. And my younger brother was on his way to London or UK, and they stopped through on their way to the UK and had a couple of beers and was like, why aren't you doing this professionally? And I was like, well, because I'm getting my master's in ceramics and I'm going to teach. And he goes, oh, you might have a career in this. So one thing led to another. I did an internship with Catamount, which was one of the first Vermont craft breweries. And they basically taught me the bottom line is if things are kept clean, then more than likely you're going to make good beer. And then, the whole quality of your ingredients really makes a big difference, and taking care of your yeast, and that comes the science end of it. And recipe formulation, of course, is the art part of it. And I went from Catamount to painting houses and looking for a job in the brewing industry, and I got a job at Harpoon as the brewer's hands, because he chopped one of his fingers off in the keg filler.
Oh, man.
And so, it was kind of brutal. And he was more of a marathon runner than a brewer. And I had the phone number to Russ Heisner, who was the brewmaster at Harpoon, who was actually getting his MBA and wasn't really around the brewery that much, but was available to take my phone calls. And so I'd call him just about every day asking, why don't we change the alpha or the IBU when, if we're just using the same amount of hops, even though the alpha acids are different, is there a calculation I can use to bring it back into spec? And he was really impressed that I had the wherewithal to ask those questions. And so the guy who was the brewer kind of walked. And they made me brewer. And
Wow.
So I was, I kind of walked into it and got really lucky. And, I fortunately, I didn't have education in brewing. I had an education in art, and but was able to kind of transition into the beer. And so I did my share of time. I worked at Harpoon for 2 years. I did the Harpoon IPA there back in 1991 or 92, and it became a full-time production beer in 93, and it has been their number one selling beer ever since. And you taste it now, and it tastes like a pale ale. But back in the 90s, it was an IPA, and we dry hopped and we home toasted all the malt, and it was really fun. It was a really interesting time. It was way, way, way before the proliferation that occurred in the past 5 years. And the 90s, the mid 90s, there were quite a few people that wanted to get into the beer industry for the wrong reasons, and there was a lot of crappy beer being made, and the cream rose to the top, and the better brewers made it through, and there was a lot of equipment that was available for a fraction of the cost, and so one thing led to another, and it was time for me to move from Harpoon. I wanted to get smaller and do more beer styles than just 4. And so I started working at the Commonwealth Brewing Company, and things started booming, and we opened up the Back Bay Brewing Company, which I got the lead brew job there, and I had a brewer that brewed for me at the Commonwealth, and then we opened up Commonwealth New York, and we were right at Rockefeller Plaza, and
wow.
it was insane.
Wow.
And that was 98, I think it was, and they kept rock. It was interesting because Joe and his wife were basic money people, and then they brought some people on, investors, one of whom really kind of steered the boat the other direction from the craft industry. And in early 2000, this guy decided that craft beer was over. The bubbles burst. We're going to get out of this. We've got a beautiful piece of property on Boylston Street. We can make much more money with booze than we can with beer, and we're wasting all this space on the brewery equipment. So let's get rid of it. And they sent me on my way. And I transferred to a very small company called the Quincy Ships Brewing Company, which sunk immediately. We were alive for a year and a half, and we didn't have any money. We opened it with a tenancy at will. The equipment that kept the building warm or cool during the summer just was terrible, and we had to keep upgrading it. And we spent so much money, and it just depleted anything we had. And we closed in about a year and a half. Now, Quincy wasn't exactly the right place. There was a lot of through traffic on Route 3A, but people weren't drinking craft beer at that time. So it was our bad. But we did win a gold medal at Great American Beer Festival.
No
so
kidding.
the beer was good. There's no question about that. It's just we were in the right place at the wrong time.
Right.
Or the wrong place at the right time.
Yeah.
And then that led me to an auction for the equipment. And, I'd spent a fair amount of money on the equipment, and it went up for auction, and it went for just pennies on the dollar.
I know.
And I was so tempted to rebuy it, but I couldn't afford it because I didn't have any more money. So, long story short, John Fahamian, who owns the tap, interviewed with me and said, look, your equipment's gone, but I have a beautiful brewery that I'm installing up in Haverhill. Do you want to go and install my brewing equipment for me? Because, I think you're a fairly reputable brewer. And I was like, yeah, let me go check out the equipment. Well, it was this beautiful piece of equipment he bought for $60,000. It was a 10-barrel brew house it was a Century made out of Alexandria, Ohio. It was freaking beautiful, and I was
wow for 60,000.
Yeah, and I was.
Oh my god!
And it had a mash lauter ton. It had a mash kettle with a transfer pump that was one of the biggest pumps I'd ever seen in my life. And I worked at Harpoon, and that at that point we were a fairly big brewery, doing 8,000 barrels a year, and this pump the mash transfer pump was enormous. It was a 4-inch inlet and a 3-inch outlet to transfer the mash out of the mash kettle into the lauter ton. Yeah, it was incredible. It was really cool. And I just was like, okay, I'll brew on this, whatever. And, I really didn't do much investigating into Haverhill. And I figured, it's got to be better than Quincy. Unfortunately, it wasn't that much better than Quincy. And I lasted about 8 months. I brewed a bunch of beer, but it languished. It sat in the serving tanks for months at a time.
Oh,
And
no.
it was just such a bummer. And again, it was just the timing again. Haverhill was not ready for craft beer.
No.
And I got a phone call from Dave Yarrington, who was the brewmaster over at Smutty Nose, and said, "Hey, we're looking for a brewer for Portsmouth Brewery. Do you know anyone?" And I was like, not really. I'll put my axe to the grindstone and try and figure out if there's anyone out there that you might be able to snag. And I hung up the phone. I was like, wait a minute, I know somebody. I want that job. So I went and interviewed with Peter and David in the Fishbowl, and I got the job. And
Awesome.
that was in 2003.
Uh-huh.
And I was at T-Brew for about 8.5 years. Had a great run. I definitely brought their beers back to spec. The brewer was just kind of languishing, and he was getting tired of the day in, day out routine, and he was way overworked and underpaid. And I was like, okay, we'll take each one of these beers, we'll figure out what's wrong with it, we'll make it better, or we'll get rid of it. And I basically turned every beer into a decent beer. And one of the beers I told Peter I would not touch was Old Brown Dog, because he'd won a medal at Great American Beer Festival with it. And
Wow.
So I did not touch that.
Uh-huh.
But all the rest of the beers, the Black Cat Stout was so acrid and bitter. And it was kind of like a Guinness clone, but way too much roasted barley, not enough flaked barley, and it was horrible. And over the course of 8 batches, I totally transitioned it into what it is now. And we would take that recipe and we'd use different yeast strains. We'd call it the Chat Noir, the Black Cat in Belgium. We'd do, we'd add some oats to it, make an oatmeal stout.
Cool.
So it was really kind of fun. And the great thing about Portsmouth was there were no rules or anything, and so everything was fair game. And we started brewing really fun IPAs there as well. And that was 2003 to 2012. And in 2012, my wife and I, we were just chatting, and she was like, Todd, you've been doing this for a long time, and you've been doing it for other people. Do you think you could actually do it on your own? And I was like, yeah, of course I can. And she was like, okay, well, let's do it. Why don't you put in your notice?
You had really good people in your life kind of guiding you and putting the question out there. And you know what? You're like, you know what? I want to do that. That's great.
I'd love to do that. I'd love to take that risk.
Yeah.
Well, my beard went from red to white over the past 5 years. And, opening your own brewery, as you know, is quite the endeavor. It's quite the risk.
Oh, my God.
It's money just
That's
oozing out of your pocket,
oozing is
bank account,
gushing,
and nothing coming in until you open those doors. And it took us from October of 2012 to September of 2014 to open. And there was a lot of sleepless nights in that.
Yeah.
But once we opened, the community around here, Kittery and Portsmouth, has been phenomenal, and they show up. And day one we had 1 beer on draft, and then day 3 we had 2 beers on draft, and day 5 we had 4 beers on draft, and finally we got up to 4 beers, and we're doing 4 beers for our first year, and it was like, God, we can do more. We only had 3 fermenters, and we had 2 horizontal maturation tanks and a big, huge bright tank. And so, maybe we could afford 2 more fermenters. So we got 2 more fermenters and started doing a more changeover beers, and added another kegerator. So we've been running 6 beers for about 3 years now. And we're toying with the idea of putting sixtels in one of our kegerators instead of half barrels, and putting on 2 more taps, so we'd have 8 beers. And we know we can do that. It's just a matter of getting it done.
Yeah, I know. Everybody said, "Oh, you don't have like nitro stout." I'm like, "No, I got to do it." It's just it's just a matter of getting it done, and then
Right. Everything takes much longer than you really want it.
It does, yeah.
But that's pretty much my history. And Trib's been open for 4 years. We're celebrating our 5th anniversary in September. And things are, January and February are kind of slow, and you kind of take a step back and you do a little bit of maintenance and a little repair work. And think about, what's going to happen over the next 4 months. And hopefully things are going to pick up and we're going to kick some ass.
So then you probably opened the same time I did, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I just celebrated 4 years in November.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's cool.
It was September, yeah.
Wow. So, yeah, a couple of questions, if you don't mind. I going back to Harpoon. I saw your article in Beer Advocate did an article about you, and like you're wearing this hat. I'm not sure where it came from, and I don't know what you see. If you saw that picture, it's still online here. It's like back in 2013. It's like hops in it, I think, or
yeah. Okay, it was the hop hat. That was the my going away party at Portsmouth Brewery.
Oh, was that?
Yeah, and Joanne made this the King of Hops hat, and it had a bra strap for the chin strap. It was the funniest goddamn thing.
I'm like looking at this picture. I was like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
But back to Harpoon, you said, I saw one of the things in the article, you made a stout there?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
what happened with that? I mean, did that...
Oh, man, we were in South Boston, and South Boston, they have Beamish there, they have, Maxon, they've got Guinness, they got Murphy's, and we came out with an American-style stout that had some hops in it. And I tasted the Sierra Nevada, and I was like, oh, my God, this is beautiful.
Right.
So I made one of those, and we could not give the shit away. It was unbelievable. I mean, and being in South Boston, two of our salesmen were really good at what they were doing, but they could not sell the shit.
Wow.
And
they were just traditional stout, yeah.
And that was my first seasonal that I did, and I thought it was going to be great. And sure enough, it was an absolute bomb.
Yeah.
The Led Zeppelin.
Well, you never know. But then you came out with Harpoon IPA, which is like a juggernaut now. I mean, it's like a standard with many restaurants. So you're saying that changed from when you did it, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's way more homogenized now, and it's I think they dropped the IBUs a little bit, and it's 5.6, I think. When we originally brewed it, I think it was 6.3.
Okay.
And so, it was a little bit stronger.
Right.
They've kind of brought it back down.
A little bit more sessionable,
yeah, they did get rid of Harpoon Ale, which, they kind of felt that was fighting the IPA. And when they got rid of it, they kind of brought it down a little bit in its specs, I'm pretty sure.
Maybe they did like a hybrid kind of thing.
And they weren't dry hopping it, and we were home toasting. We were home toasting the malts, and it was a very handcrafted beer back in the day. And when Al took the reins, he said, well, we can make things a lot easier here. We can just do a lot of late kettle additions, and we can buy Victory malts, which is, a toasted malt, and it works pretty well and tastes pretty good. But, it was different. And so, things change, and everybody knows that. And, when beers are a proven winner, you can kind of tweak them a little and eke out a little more money on them. And God, if I had as my wife said, if you had a penny for every keg of Harpoon IPA that was sold, we would be sitting on a Virgin Island.
Yeah, because it's mass. Well, it's like mass. I don't want to say mass produced like Budweiser, but it's all over the place, right?
Oh yeah.
So and when that happens, kind of the beer changes, right?
Exactly.
So. You were kind of the craft brewer, and you developed something that was really good, and it's kind of like one of the mass produce it, so they had to cut back on things and change it. So I understand what you're saying about it changing.
Right.
Right. But it's all over the place now. But you're right. You should have got a royalty or something.
That would have been really nice. Yeah.
Imagine that. Wow.
Yeah.
But now, fast forward to Portsmouth Brewery, and your another juggernaut was Kate the Great, right?
Yeah, the Imperial.
Now, how did that come about? I mean,
well, so the cool thing was that I had been brewing that since Back Bay Brewing Company days, and we got a cease and desist order on it because we were calling it Boston Strangler Stout, and there were still family, and I'm sure there's still family members that are alive.
Oh my God!
that they didn't think it was an appropriate name
They
for a
were
beer. And
no.
the more we think about it, it really wasn't. And so we got a cease and desist order, and we stopped producing Boston Strangler Stout as Boston Strangler Stout. We just called it Imperial Stout. And that recipe has basically stuck with me over the course of the past 25 years.
So now you brought the recipe with you, so it's your
Exactly.
recipe, right? I was just wondering
Exactly.
how you like you did the Kate the Great there, but it was kind of a recipe you brought in, you did it there, and then you
Right.
brought it with you to your new brewery. So okay,
Exactly. And
yeah,
and Peter, Peter knew that I had brought the recipe with me and that I'd been tweaking it since I started brewing it. And he was like, "Look, you can take the recipe. I understand that's your intellectual property. You brought it with you, and you've made us great. And so why don't you keep the recipe? I'm going to keep the name because it's my brewery, and that's my intellectual property." And I was like, okay, I guess that'll work. And
I
so
didn't. Did
when
they
we
still make it or
no, they don't.
no?
And the thing is that he said he wasn't going to make it. But the thing was, we had a bunch of kegs that we put into storage. And so if he was going to serve those, he needed the rights to the name. If I was brewing it here under the name Kate the Great, then he couldn't actually sell those kegs.
Mm-hmm.
So I agreed. And we decided to call it Mott the Lesser as kind of a fuck you,
Right.
So, there's no more hardship between Peter and I. We're pretty good friends still,
That's
and
good.
yeah. And it was unfortunate that I couldn't take the name, but again, we've got a decent following. We sell the 1,500 bottles in a day, and we have a really fun week. The beer is on for a week now. And we've limited the amount that people drink. So you can have two of the drafts of it. You can buy two bottles, and then you can have a third draft of your choice. So you're not loitering around. At Portsmouth Brewery, people would literally park themselves for 4 or 5 hours, and the line just would not move. And it was really tough. And even though we had the lottery system and people could come pick the bottles up whenever they wanted, still people wanted to drink the draft. Well, we only had 7 barrels, and man, it would literally go in
It
8
just
hours
blew
or
up.
10 hours. Yeah, it was crazy. And that was the Advocate. That was their first Best Beers of America. That was 2008 that they put that out in like December or January, and we got second best beer on the planet and the best beer in America.
Man,
And yeah, and I'm like, an Imperial Stout, really? I'm up
right.
against New Glarus, who's got this beautiful raspberry sour beers, and Sierra Nevada, and Allagash, and all these really great breweries, and they named mine number one. That was just crazy. So
Wow.
I always kind of took it with a grain of salt that they were way off base. But
But it's
hey,
an excellent.
it
I mean, it's an
created.
excellent beer. I mean, I have Mott the
Oh,
Lesser, and it's in my calendar when you release it. I guess every 6 months, right?
yeah. We're about 5 months now.
5 months.
And
Okay.
so this will be in April, the end of April.
So
We're going
April's
to
the
be
next one.
releasing it.
Okay.
Yeah, April 27th, I think it
All right.
is.
I got to put that on my phone.
Yeah, and then we'll do an October release, but we haven't even brewed that batch. We've got the April in. I think we're going to be bottling like the week before Easter, so like the 14th or something. So we'll be ready.
Cool. And then how long do you age that? You brew it, but how long do you age that?
Yeah,
You age
so
it for like
it's a
4 months
month.
or something, or
It's a month in primary, and then it's 4 months in maturation. And we
wow.
found that, we do the primary in stainless, and then we transfer half of it into oak, and we keep 3 of the oak barrels the same, and we change one of them so that there's always a little bit of a difference between, and the contact time is only 3.5 to 4 months in the oak. And
Okay.
what that does is it adds nuance, but doesn't hit you over the head. A lot of the imperial stouts that go into like bourbon barrels, to me, they just taste like bourbon. And, because they're in
Okay.
there for a year or more. And what we wanted nuance and some of the characteristics that an imperial stout would have had because it would have been put in an oak barrel.
Right.
And so we started playing with port, apple brandy, and another fortified wine. and then another distillate. And so we've got port, sherry, apple brandy, and then we're going to do a tequila, and a mezcal and an añejo. An extra añejo tequila. So,
Wow.
Again, that the tequila barrels start as a bourbon barrel, but then they get the tequila in,
Right.
and they're usually in for about 3 or 4 years, and the extra añejos are 4, 5, or 6 years. And
Wow.
we got a barrel from Gillesco, so it's authentic, and we used it in our last one. And it was really, really, it brought on these chocolate notes that you just would not assume a barrel would bring, but it did. And then we took the barrel back up to River Drive, which is the cooperage up in Buxton, Maine. And they can take a barrel that has had beer in it, they'll clean it, and then they'll reintroduce the booze into the fiber. And so we can take the tequila barrel, which only had, it had tequila in it for a long time, and then it got a one-time use on the Mott the Lesser. And then we took it back up to River Drive, and they put 1 bottle of the mezcal, and then 2 bottles of an extra añejo. And they've got this technology that they can actually force the booze into the fiber. And then we get the barrel back, and there's just a tiny little bit of a little bit of the booze in there, and we just put the beer on top of that. So there's probably a cup of booze in there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and it definitely adds an extra 0.5% of ethanol to the beer. So when we do our testing, we notice that we're getting like a 1/3% more alcohol in the beer just from its rest in the barrels.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you use them and then you reuse them. Is that what it is? Or?
We can reuse the barrels like 2 or 3 times.
Oh, okay.
And then we get rid of them.
So what do you do when you get rid of them? Where do they go? If you need me to help you with that, I can.
Okay.
I love to take one of your barrels and do something.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have one. I think we'll have one coming up pretty soon. We've got a port barrel that I think we've got one more use out of, which would be the October one.
Please let me know. I'll run over and grab it. I'm right down the road from you.
Yeah, I know. You're
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So, you're. It seems like you're doing a lot of interesting stuff at Tributary too. I was looking at your. We did a Weizenbach. You did one as well. You're doing the Brut IPA. The Brut IPAs are becoming popular now. You see them?
They were this summer, and we waited until now, and so we've got a Brut IPA in the middle of winter, and it's not the most refreshing beer in a cold, wintry day like the Weizenbach or the Winter Saison.
Right.
But it's really delicious. And Ian and Woody designed the recipe. I had nothing to do with, and they did not use any enzymes in it, which a lot of people were using enzymes. We did a stepped mash infusion, and it enabled us to break down all the starches into convertible fermentables, and we got a fairly dry beer off of that. We're going to maybe take some of the residual malts out of it and make it a little bit drier for the summer.
Right.
But still, have like a degree of Play-Doh still in it, of residual, so that it does have a little bit of balance. There's something about a really, really dry beer with a lot of hops in it. Just it's not that pleasant. I like to, and that's my own personal taste. I mean, there's so many people that like dry IPAs, but and just scrape your tongue off.
The yeast is a big component in that, right?
Well,
Mike, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Where do you get that from? You get it from? Do you have a source for that, or?
Oh, well, we're using quite a few different yeast strains, but our Chico is a fermentus, which is a dried yeast strain, and we can generate it about 14 generations before we see it really morphing, and then we'll just smack up a new pack and off we go. But we're using a whole lot of different yeast strains, some saisons, some lagers that we, they're all available out there, and it's just a matter of finding what you like. We were up at Maine Beer Company for their kind of industry opening party last night.
Oh.
And
Okay.
one of their brewers, who's actually now an engineer, was like, "Hey, would you taste this beer?" And it was his Pilsner, and it was just so good. And he was using it's a Carlsberg lager strain. And, Carlsberg was, I think, one of the first lager strains out
Mm-hmm.
there. And it just had this beautiful biscuity character to it. It was a
Wow.
really, really nice lager.
Mm.
And, that's a big departure for Maine Beer Company because they're all about their IPAs. And
That's
so
right.
it was kind of interesting to see them doing that. And you never know. This industry just might change a little bit over the next couple of years. I'm kind of tired of the IPA thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question about that. So I know what the answer is, but maybe you can tell people. What do you think about the New England style IPA? What do you think about that?
There are a lot of people that love it. I believe Kimmick was really kind of the pioneer, but it was never his intention to have it look like a milkshake.
Right.
And it just so happened that John has changed his attitude, and his Topper and Focal Banger and Crusher. They're really, really tasty beers.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, the whole idea of, I'm gonna make an IPA that looks like a milkshake is, I just don't think it's really beer. Lactose was never part of the Reinheitsgebot. Not that I'm a Nazi. Excuse me. I'm not a Reinheitsgebot crazy. But I think beer really should be 4 ingredients. And if you're using lactose, well, maybe use it appropriately, like in a milk stout. But using it in an IPA, and the oated IPAs that look like, God, juicy juice. It's crazy, but
milkshakes. Yeah, I know.
And I'm old school, and I certainly I've been called a curmudgeon because I'm a purist and I love bright, crisp beers. And give me a IPA that, like Stone IPA. That's such a beautiful beer. I used to love that beer, and I think they've changed it a little bit. But when Mitch Steele was there, it was like Centennial and Chinook, and maybe some Cascade.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was just such a great beer, and it just had such nice presence. The new hops are super juicy, and they're very dank, and that's what a lot of people are loving. But there's only so much you can do with Mosaic and oh God, what is the other big one? Galaxy and
Galaxy,
and they're just they're super juice bombs, and they're okay. They're fine. But if I want to drink an IPA, I want to be able to drink an IPA. I don't want to have to suck it through a straw. And and I really do. I do appreciate innovation because there's not much that can be done, but jumping on board to make what is now, it's now one of the, oh God, what are they called? BJCP. It's a style. It's in the, the guideline.
Actually, the GABF, it's a new style for this year, and not one New England brewery won that category.
Of course not. Of course not.
It's just everybody from everywhere else. Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I don't understand this.
Yeah.
I don't understand anything.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but I do appreciate innovation. I just wish they were a little more creative and working on brighter styles of beer.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a fad, I don't know, but it's been around for a while, and everybody loves that, cloudy, they just look for it, and hops and cloudiness and more hops, everybody just is nuts about it, We do a couple of double IPAs, we do some, all of our stuff's pretty clear, hazy, but... a
little bit of haze is fine.
A little bit of
when
haze,
you can't actually see through the beer, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, but I agree about Kimmick because I had him on the podcast. Actually, we did an interview with him about Alchemist, and he really didn't mean it to be that way, but that's the way it is, and it's just delicious. It's fantastic. Yeah. And then Mitch Steele, who I'm going to interview too. I'm psyched. I'm interviewing all these awesome people.
Right.
He did an excellent job with Stone with very basic hops, but the stuff he created was fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
Really
Absolutely.
Good. All right. Hey, so Tributary is where you're at now. That's your baby. You're making great beer, and I appreciate you for all that you've done for the beer world, and I appreciate you coming on our podcast. If people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that in case they have
Well, it's just info at Tributary, and just address it to me. and Tributary Brewing Company, all spelled out, .com. And but we do have a website that tells you the music that we've got for Saturday and Sunday, what beers we've got on draft, what's coming up, where we are located, et cetera, where you can find our beers, restaurants and whatnot, bottle shops, et cetera. And but that's just tributarybrewingcompany.com, all spelled out.
I'll include that in the show notes so everybody can just click on it and then they can contact you. And but this has been awesome, Todd. We wanted to get Todd on the pod, right? But now
Todd on the pod.
We got him now, right? It's in the books. Put it in the books.
All right, man.
Awesome.
Right.
Hey, well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Take care.
All right.
Yeah, that was Tod Mott, who is the co-founder and master brewer at Tributary, and he has a long history, as you heard, and done a lot of great things with a lot of different companies. He just knows what he's doing. He's the man. There are a lot of people that say they're brewers. They're not brewers. He is a brewer. He's a master brewer, and he's a great guy, fantastic guy. I've known him for a while. Actually, opened up around the same time we did. And he's doing very well. He's doing great, and he's enjoying himself, and he has his own brewery, and it's just fantastic. So I appreciated him coming on and giving you all that knowledge. And I appreciate you for tuning in and downloading this podcast. You're awesome. But if you could do me a massive favor, we bring all this to you for free. We got great guests. Man, this week I got awesome guests lined up, which we'll be releasing in the next few weeks. We got Mitch Steele, former master brewer of Stone. It's awesome. And he has his own brewery now in Atlanta, New Realm. And also, get this, the master brewer of Guinness. How about that, huh? I see he has a video out there, Fergal. He was giving the queen a pint. He was showing the queen how to pour a pint. Unbelievable. And we also have the man up at Allagash, the master brewer up at Allagash, who's making fantastic beers, Jason. So, man, I'm just floored. I landed. I have Thursdays like going to be nuts. I have all these guys back to back, but we're going to get these podcasts done, and we're getting them out to you in the next couple of weeks. So, stay tuned. But in the meantime, please do me a favor. Go on to iTunes, subscribe, leave us a rating, leave us a review. You guys got to do this for me. I haven't seen a lot of activity. I know you're listening. Take 2 minutes. It takes 2 minutes. Go to your computer, iTunes, search for us, rating, review. That's what gets us boosted in the rankings. I see us creeping up the rankings, but I mean, dude, there's a lot of podcasts out there, like from 2015, that are still ranked. I mean, what the hell? I mean, I do 3 a week. Give me a break. iTunes, what are you doing? So go out there and give me a rating, all right? Give me a review. Let's get on there. Let's get this thing updated. So get me up in the rankings. I appreciate that. I'll keep getting you the awesome the brewing knowledge and exposure that you need to make good decisions about beer, and we'll call it even, okay? So and also tell a friend or tell 10 friends. We like 10x here, and that's the only way we get out there. If you guys can help me out with that. All right. So we will talk to you on Wednesday. We got another episode of Beer Styles, where we go down the Great American Beer Festival lists of styles for their festival. There's 102, and then they have subcategories, so there's a lot to talk about. We pick one style a week, and then Friday we have craft brew news, bringing you the drama in the beer world. It's unbelievable. What an industry to be in, man. Never a dull moment. It's just you read a news story and you're like, what? What's happening here? It's crazy stuff, but it's awesome. It keeps the blood going. Okay, guys, so that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much. I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon.